My name is Dr. Sweta Rajan-Rankin, and I'm a senior lecturer at the School of Social Policy, Sociology and Social Research at the University of Kent. In today's presentation, I will be discussing my research theorizing the intersections between race, ethnicity, and old age. Why race, ethnicity, and aging, you might ask? According to the Office of National Statistics, over 500,000 people living in the UK are aged 90 and above. While this remains a small proportion of the total population, the percentage of older people growing older has become a much rapidly developing phenomena. And this has created an aging effect in the overall age population structure. Estimated projections from the Runnymede Trust suggest that by 2051, we will have a significant population of ethnic minority groups growing older into deep old age, that is 90 and above. We know from existing research that ethnic minority groups are more likely to have poor health and social care outcomes, less likely to access formal social services, and given the increasing pressure on intergenerational caregiving and the nuclearization of families, they are also less likely to have availability of informal care at home. The experiences of age and aging among ethnic minority populations then becomes an urgent policy concern. What is less known, however, is how we can theorize around race, ethnicity, and old age. Current studies have tended to look at ethnic aging, or minority aging as it's known in the US, in terms of a subgroup of a mainstream aging experience. This is problematic as it could perpetuate the othering of these minority groups. In similar ways, the life course has been in the periphery of race and ethnicity studies. As the first point of departure for the paper, I suggest that both race and ethnicity studies and aging studies have overlooked the intersection between race, ethnicity, and old age. In this theoretical paper, I will be exploring fresh ways of theorizing around race, ethnicity, and old age by drawing on two really exciting traditions that have come into play in recent years. The cultural turn in aging studies is one of them. In the past 20 years, we've seen an explosion of studies bringing together scholarship from the arts and humanities and the social sciences. Rather than viewing aging as a physical phenomena of biological decline, cultural aging focuses on aging as a socially constructed and cultural phenomena. This is a significant change in emphasis. It suggests that the social construction of old age and its representations in the media, television, magazines, and ads create a cultural lens by which we understand what old age is and how older bodies must perform their age. The second tradition that has come into light in recent years has been the development of post-colonial perspectives on aging. The 2016 special issue in the Journal of Aging Studies is a very good example exactly of this trend. Post-colonial studies, which in the main have emerged as a cultural critique against imperialism and colonialism, offer many useful lenses by which we can explore those intersections between race and ethnicity in later life. Concepts such as difference, othering, exile, or alterity, ambivalence, previously used in the examination of racialization and racism, are particularly relevant when we consider old age and ageism. In this paper, I bring together these two theoretical traditions, and I do so by using the body and embodiment as a framework for analysis. Age and race are both worn on the skin. They are visible in skin color, through our garments and dress, hair texture, graying of hair, wrinkles on the skin, gait and posture. The body then serves as a vehicle by which we understand what it feels like to be an aging body of color. An embodied analysis can bring together our understanding not only of how bodies interact with other bodies, but also how bodies interact with the non-human, with materiality, with space and place. For example, Julia Twiggs' work on clothing and old age helps to enhance our understanding of how older bodies negotiate age-ordered assumptions around how old age should be performed. By extending an embodied analysis of race and ethnicity in old age, we can go beyond group difference, the view that ethnic and minority aging are a subgroup of mainstream aging, and examine more fundamental ways by which racialized aging bodies are connected. I propose 4 key theoretical frames for analysis which link race ethnicity in later life. The first concept I'd like to talk about is the notion of exile. The body has been weaponized in different ways in the social construction of old age and race. According to post-colonial theory, race itself, a hugely problematic concept, was based on an arbitrary application of bodily form through skin color, phenotype, hair texture. These arbitrary embodied characteristics were used to categorize the human race into hierarchies of difference, a moral justification for the colonial project. The dominant white gaze then negates the racialized other and removes from it all forms of agency and self-determination. The other then becomes a vapid vehicle of nothingness, an opposition to the subject form. Within old age, the preoccupation with biological aging, with frailty, death, disease, and dying, does precisely that. It exiles aging bodies by defining them through abjection. Old age then becomes the antithesis to life, to health, youth, vitality, to everything that we value in what is human. Such forms of abjection are common to the construction then both of race and ethnicity and old age. And these concepts of exile and abjection could be one frame of comparative analysis. Othering is another common thread that brings race, ethnicity, and later life together. By defining people of old age and ethnic minority groups primarily through their difference from the hegemonic norms of whiteness, of youth-centrism, of ableism and ageism, of masculinity. Racialized aging bodies of color are then othered through the weaponization of difference. Examples of othering can be seen in everyday life. By projecting aging in terms of active or productive aging, by assuming that older bodies are only valuable if they present themselves as seeking youthful activity. We are then forcing older people to live their lives in line with youth-oriented cultural assumptions. With recent events, particularly the Brexit referendum in Britain and Donald J. Trump's nationalist politics in the United States, we're beginning to see much more hate crime targeted, particularly against aging bodies of color. This targeting owes to multiple forms of difference, a disavowal of the hegemonic norm. And it needs to be understood in terms of the intersections between age, gender, race, and class, and not just as separate forms of injury or injustice. Linked to the concept of aging and othering, and actually the biological focus and binary allocation of human subjects into us and them, the issue of visibility and invisible difference becomes particularly important. The dehumanizing process of othering makes racial and cultural difference hyper-visible at one level, while making the same racialized aging bodies completely invisible in terms of institutional protection and in terms of welfare policies. In recent years, for example, the immigration crisis in the UK and in Western Europe has been met with the same sort of moral panic rhetoric that we've seen in Nigel Farage's picture of Breaking Point, as indeed the increasing aging population has been described in terms of the aging crisis and welfare burden. These dialectic forms of invisibility and visibility, therefore, are reinforced through multiple levels of difference, and then they need multiple forms of resistance. The fourth frame of analysis I propose is one of decoloniality. A key component in resisting dominant gaze is by decolonizing the basis of knowledge and power, by which the subject is defined and through opposition, the object or the other is created. Just as post-colonial thinking around decolonizing the academy has led scholars to ask, why is my professor not black and why is my curriculum white? By extension, a decolonial approach towards race, racism, and old age can involve challenging ageist and racist assumptions that are implicit or explicit and shared through media, through social constructions and cultural observations around ethnic aging and aging among minority communities. Therefore, we need to think really about how we can transcend the dominant gaze, how the other can reanimate its vacant, vapid form, how it can claim back from the gaze of the other its spirit. And in order to do this, to reframe and reanimate what it means to be an aging body of color, we need to shift away from current thinking of race and old age as separate discourses. In conclusion, this paper explores fresh ways in which we can think about and theorize around race, ethnicity, and old age by drawing on an embodied analysis of post-colonial perspectives on aging. I conclude this paper with some provocations, particularly to do with the limits of intersectionality and identity politics. Given the dominance of the Anthropocene, in other words, by placing the human subject at the center of all analysis, we have problems in relation to the reproduction of othering through language, discourse, and rhetoric. Perhaps then a way forward is to consider race, ethnicity, and old age in terms of the assemblage, in terms of a relationship between human subjects, but also spaces, places, and material culture. And in doing so, the fault lines of difference can be more fully explored and also be challenged in their representative forms. Reanimating discourses around aging bodies of color, and hence acts of resistance against ageism and racism, is therefore completely crucial and can be seen in the patterning of everyday life. Thank you for listening.